After spending most of the year as the front-runner in Iowa and New Hampshire, Mitt Romney is spending again on negative campaign ads aimed at Mike Huckabee and John McCain. Is this a smart strategy so close to the Iowa caucus? We now turn to our political panel, Republican strategist Jason Rowe, and from the Young Democrats of America, Alexandra Acker. So Romney's hitting Huckabee in Iowa on immigration with these ads, and then McCain in New Hampshire on taxes and immigration. Jason, do you think that's a good strategy?
Well, I think it's the only strategy at this point. You know, he has, for 10 months, had his record examined as thoroughly as any candidate in the race, while Mike Huckabee has largely been ignored in Iowa. And so I think he's got to turn the focus on Huckabee to the degree he can. And frankly, the strategy he's been doing, which has helped him to this point, has not helped him in the last 3 weeks. And if he doesn't have a change in direction and start to change the subject and focus on other people and what their failings might be, their shortcomings as candidates to represent the Republican Party, I think it would be a failure on his part.
Now, this idea of going negative, and by the way, the Romney campaign calls them contrast messages, not negative ads. But Alexandra, does this work in Iowa? Because those caucus voters tend to not like negative ads.
It's a dangerous strategy for Iowa, and I think it's a particularly dangerous strategy for Romney, who's kind of cultivated this image as the boy next door 1950s sitcom dad, if you will, to then be putting out not only negative ads, I mean, these are nuclear ads. He went very tough on Huckabee and McCain. I agree that it's the only strategy he has left, but I disagree with the reasoning. I think it's an act of desperation, really. I mean, Romney knows if he doesn't win Iowa and New Hampshire, his campaign is done.
It does. If he does not win Iowa and New Hampshire, it does undermine pretty much what the premise of his candidacy has been, is that he could create momentum in the first couple states, roll into his home state of Michigan and in South Carolina and Florida and build off of those early wins. If he doesn't win early, that is going to be a big problem for him. So I agree with Alexandra in that.
Well, Huckabee and McCain are fighting back a little bit. Huckabee was describing the ads as dishonest, and McCain says it looks like Romney's campaign is in a, quote, tailspin, and that Romney's the one who's been changing on the issues. Is that kind of response good enough to sort of mute the effect of the ads, Alexandra?
You know, all of these candidates are hitting each other hard in these last few days, and it's very interesting to see what effect the holidays are having on how voters respond to that. Earlier than ever, these primaries and caucuses are coming up. Everyone is full of holiday cheer, and we don't really know what impact this negative back and forth is really going to have.
Did you hear in Carl Cameron's report about Romney kind of changing a little bit of what he's saying today, that now he doesn't want to be a one-hit wonder, that he's going to have a national campaign? Does that signal anything, Jason?
Well, he's managing the expectations of the outcomes on these early states. I mean, he has gambled on those first 2 states, and now that things are tightening up, it's a 2-man race in Iowa, it's a 2-man race in New Hampshire, and if things don't go his way, he's got to have something to fall back on to legitimize his continuing. He does have more money, more infrastructure than any of the candidates in the first half dozen early states. So I think he's got the ability to carry forward with some second-place finishes.
We're going to have to leave it there and let Alexandra have the last word next time. But Jason, Alexandra, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
They're often part of candidate Christmas cards and advisors to the campaign, official and unofficial. They're children of presidential candidates, and more of them are turning up on the campaign trail. But do they help or hurt a candidate's chances? Back with us now for some analysis, Republican strategist Jason Rowe, and from Young Democrats of America, Alexandra Acker. So you have McCain's daughter on the road, you have Huckabee's daughter, Edwards' daughter, Romney's sons, Chelsea Clinton, every once in a while Barack Obama's little girls. Alexandra, does it help?
I really do think it does. I think it humanizes a candidate. You know, you may dislike Hillary Clinton, but you can't argue she's not a great mom. And putting Chelsea and putting all of the candidates' kids out on the road reminds everyone that not only are they political leaders, but they're parents and their husbands and wives as well. In 2004, when I was working on the Kerry campaign doing youth outreach, I used to joke all the time that the Kerry Hines Edwards kids were my secret weapon, because they got so much press attention everywhere they went because they were kind of an anomaly.
But does it really move voters, do you think, Jason? They may like to see the picture, the Christmas card, but does it really change their mind going into a voting booth?
Well, and I agree with Alexandra that it humanizes them, and people that we may think have horns and fangs and tails seem to be better people if they have their children around. But I don't know that at the end of the day it'll move a voter to support somebody based on them having wonderful shots on the camera with their children. However, when you look at situations like, say, Rudy Giuliani, in which his children are seemingly distancing themselves from his candidacy, I think that does probably affect the mind of a voter when they're deciding if he's of the character that they want to support for president.
Alexandra, you've seen the inner workings of the Kerry campaign you were talking about. Do the kids, the adult children, do they actually offer advice, or are they just sort of there to be part of the grand scene of everything?
They do, and there's obviously a range. You know, in 2000, Corinna Gorschiff was very involved in Al Gore's campaign. Vanessa Kerry was very involved in 2004. You do see a range, but obviously I think any kid is going to talk to their parents about what they do for a living and talk to them about the situations they're encountering on a daily basis. So I think it's only natural for the candidates' kids to play a role there. I do think that it can help move voters, certainly as we see with my demographic of young voters, having a candidate's kid who's in our era, of our generation, can really help the candidate identify with younger voters.
Jason, do you think it's tough on the kids to be out on the campaign and hear all the less than flattering things about their mom or dad?
Well, you know, you have to assume that most of these candidates have been in public life for a long time, so they're probably accustomed to it. I think probably to the degree it starts to affect them when they start to be called into the ring. But, you know, if you step into the ring, you shouldn't be surprised if you get punched. So if they do involve themselves, then they should expect to be a part of the process.
That's true. Jason Rowe, Alexandra Acker, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Molly.